Good morning and welcome. I'm hoping I'm not going to just start bawling up here. This has been such a long time waiting to be able to do an in-person PW gathering like this. And want to thank Jan for being our guinea pig and Lou for working diligently on getting this crazy system working. And I would just like to open with a little prayer this morning. Lord God, we thank you for the gift of community and for this church family. We thank you for the artisans of the past that created these beautiful windows that lift us heavenward. Lord, we also want to thank the efforts of Gary and his crew from Mill City who have worked on the restoration of these beautiful windows for us, and ask your blessing on them as they continue to rebuild after the fires that destroyed their community. Lord, we just thank you for the blessings to our community and to this church family, and ask your continued blessings. In Jesus' name, amen. So as you came in, you were able to take a look at this beautiful book that Jan, with the help of her husband and co-conspirator, have spent 10 years researching, traveling to many places in the Northwest to visit these churches and take pictures and notes and confirm whether they were in fact Bovey windows. And the results of that are this amazing book. And she also threw in a little history of our church. I have been lucky to be one of her proofreaders, and I can tell you, I can pick this book up now and still enjoy reading the stories and about these different founders of our church here. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jan, and we'll say a little prayer that everything works.
It took some, it's loud, I'm not used to microphones. It took some technical wizardry to make this happen so you could see big slides and they could still stream. So, to Lou. And Cooper, who came and rescued us last night in panic. It is really good to see you all. I have so missed PW meetings. And welcome to those streaming. I hope you can get it. And yeah, this has been a long time in coming, but our stained glass windows have always affected me, whether I knew a lot or not. So I was going to ask you, what do you think when you see the windows? How do they affect you? Anybody? Please tell me. Yes?
When I was preparing to give the talk that I gave in May about bipolar disorder, I came into practice on a Saturday before the Sunday, and it was earlier in the day than I had seen the windows, and they were just glowing. And, I felt they were glowing for me, to just encourage me and support me. It was really beautiful.
So you probably didn't hear that streaming. Someone said they came into practice, a talk and the windows were glowing, and it really encouraged them, like it was glowing for them, and it probably was. Anybody else?
I think when I come in here, over the years, because my grandparents, of course, were here, and
So,
I just think it is a remarkable, remarkable effort. The artistry, the colors, the design, everything that goes into this is just beyond belief. It really is.
true. So besides reminding you of your family and distracting you from a dull sermon, just the majesty of them
Oh,
get to you.
absolutely. It's sort of awe-inspiring.
It is awe-inspiring. Yes?
I'm so glad to be able to learn how this is done, because you look at this picture, but you can't appreciate the work that has gone into all the different colors, and I'm just real anxious to hear. Thank you.
So seeing all the colors and the detail
Yes.
and the work that's gone into it and knowing more about it. But you don't have to know a lot to appreciate that part of it, do you?
No.
You don't have to know this whole book to appreciate.
More interesting though, too.
It is. Anybody else? Okay. Everyone's going to be shocked, so here we go. I was kind of where you all were. And I came in, looked at the windows. They shimmered, they danced in the light. The stories spoke to me on Sundays, and I didn't know anything else. I didn't know who made them. Nothing. So, that was until I ran in the hall to Lynn Neville. And then things changed. She was holding this brochure that wasn't finished in her hand. It was started by Marty Whiteside, if anyone remembers her. And Marty wasn't able to finish it, and Lynn was trying to figure out how to get it printed and how to finish it and how to get the pictures in. And I just said, I'll do it. And then I went and figured out how to do it. So, but it left me, so we did get this done, but it put me on the committee, with the fundraising committee with Lynn and Judy and Carrie Gleason and now Libby Ramirez. That was about 10 years ago. And it's been one unexpected, incredible journey. I did not expect to know a thing about stained glass windows. And now I know a whole lot. So, and then Lou and I, we wanted a book with our committee, more than this little brochure, because there was more to tell. So that was the idea. But then I started discovering other churches with Povey windows, and then more, and then more, and more. And we went, Lou and I have been to about 35 or more of them. And he takes really super pictures that are in the book. And it was something that needed to come out of my computer, out of my head, get put on paper, and shared with you. That's why it's in a book, because that kind of thing just shouldn't be lost. So, here we go. Our whirlwind window journey. The medieval slide, Lou. There we go. That's what they looked like 12th century or so. What is that? 13th century, when they were at their zenith in the art of stained glass. They were considered picture books or Bible stories, or someone called them the poor man's Bible. And you realize Bibles weren't printed. They weren't allowed in homes. The priest was the interpreter. So they put the stories in the windows for people, in the great cathedrals, in churches, all over. It was the highlight. It was the high time for stained glass art. And notice the deep, deep blues and the deep, deep reds. Those are marks of the dyes of the medieval time. Nowadays, you don't see that. So someday I'll get to a cathedral in Europe and go see them. During World War II, when all the bombing was taking place, they actually removed those really high windows from the cathedrals and hid them. in, I don't know, took them away, and they survived, most of them. So that's good. And what a German monk said in the 12th century about stained glass windows, that they help lift men's souls closer to God, and I will add women too. I think they do, actually. I think they do. So, now about the Povey brothers. Next slide. There's two. That's the last place that they created stained glass. Now,
Is that in Oregon?
yes, I'll tell you. But you can ask. Finding things about Povey Brothers Glass Company is hard. No one has written a book about them. They were called the Tiffany of the Northwest. They were in business from 1988 to 1929. 1888. Yeah, that would be reversed. That would be very tricky. And I don't know how many windows they produced, numerous. And nobody's written a book about them. I'm sure someone's written a book about Tiffany. But Leslie Field down at U of O was studying building preservation, and she wrote a thesis about them and all the repair work they did at First Christian Church in Eugene. So she gets the best history of the Povey, but it's a thesis filed in the U of O library. It's not a published book. And and after that, it's just in pieces all over the place. So David, John, and George Povey were the brothers, and they came from a long line of stained glass artists from England. Their parents moved to the U.S., Joseph and Hannah, in 1848, and they taught all of their children the art of stained glass. So David Povey attended 5 years at Cooper Institute in New York and graduated in 1884. John worked in glass shops in Newark, Philadelphia, and St. Louis, and George was a partner in a glass in the Newark studio for 10 years. So in 1888, David, who was 22, and John, who was 20, got a commission to do the windows at First Presbyterian Church in Portland. 15 windows. So they came on out, and you'll see one later. They're magnificent. Their fame grew, and they established a business in Portland. So they talked their brother, George, to come out, who's age 39. So the three of them are in Portland, and that's where the business stayed. George managed the business and accounting. David was the artisan, directed the design department, and he came to each church and designed the windows to fit the architecture and worked with the people. There's an article in the GT about the committee here who chose the colors and worked with Povey. They did pretty well, don't you think? And John was a glazier and metal craftsman. He oversaw the fabrication department. Their sister Ida became a bookkeeper. Another sister, Emma, joined them as an assistant artist. And the business grew, and they took on employees. Maybe they had 25 at the height, I'm not sure. That's not well recorded either. They moved several times around town and ended up at 5th and Flanders, where they built this building, which still stands. We took a picture of it. In the next picture, Lou, there's their old sign. There's now a tall apartment building that hides it. But it was still there for a long time after they weren't in business anymore. George Povey in 1905 was called to fight in the in 1898, was called to fight in the Spanish-American War, and he died in the Philippines in 1905. So his brothers, David and John, bought his share. And then in 1912, their sister Emma died. And in 1913, John became ill. So David took over the running of the whole business. And John died in 1917. So we're down to David running the shop. And he bought out John's shares. And then David's daughter, Diamond, helped him. And then David died in 1924. So all 6 of his children were involved in the business. And it lasted until 1929 when they sold it to W.P. Fuller Glass in Seattle. They retained all their employees and kept the business going in Portland for a while. But they eventually moved everybody up to Seattle. And they're still descendants of Povies and employees up there too. So for 41 years, these guys cranked out windows and windows and windows. You'll see it in the book that I wrote, how many churches they did per year. I don't know how they did it. But they also did houses, public buildings, businesses, and all of their records were never kept. They're gone. So nobody knows exactly what they did. Polly Povey Thompson, a descendant, was trying to reconstruct the list. And she had all her notes she put in her closet in her architecture office and retired, and someone went back to get them and the closet was empty. They're gone. So more records lost. Emil Luke and Albert Gerlach were the most well-known employees of the Povey brothers, and Gerlach stayed with Fuller, but Luke and some others started their own stained glass shops. So at that time, there was a little competition, and it was friendly. They were friendly to them. But Povey started signing their windows. But our windows aren't signed. The Methodist windows down the street are signed. So that's a little about the Poveys. Now about our windows. And I gotta look here. Copyright wasn't, a thing back then. So the knocking at the door window is from the painting The Light of the World by William Holman Hunt that he did in 1851. And then when he got done, there was no handle on the door. And they said, "You forgot something." He goes, "No, I didn't. It's complete." And he said, "This is the door to the human heart. And it can be opened only from inside." We do have a knob painted on there. But anyway, they don't copy it verbatim. But you see, it's sort of the idea. So there's 2 originals in England that are hanging. And a Bible verse is assigned to every window. And for this one, it's, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me." And that's from Revelation 3:20. Now for the window itself, you notice anything else on the window besides the knocking at the door? Anything? What? There's the Alpha and the Omega. The dogwood up there are trademarks of Povey. And if you look in the center of the flower, it's a jewel. You have to get closer to really see. Those are also trademarks of Povey. Another anomaly of this window is that Angus MacLeod's name is misspelled. It's M-A-C. And when we had it restored, we thought about correcting it, because Gary could, but we decided to leave it the same. But you notice anything wrong about that window? Yeah, Judy knows.
The Alpha and the Omega are reversed.
reversed. We don't know why, but during restoration, we could have switched them to correct place. Nah, they installed them that way, so we put them back that way, or Gary did. That's the way they are. Next one, in our travels, we've encountered even more knocking at the door windows, so I thought it was fun to compare them. They have different frames, they have different colorings. Jesus has a crown, he has a halo, he doesn't have anything at all. And there's another one, right? No? Only one. Okay, so it's really fun to compare. There's more knocking at the doors out there. Those are the ones that we saw, or I had permission to use their slides. So this window next is dedicated to Pastor Angus MacLeod, and I don't know if anyone knows who he is, but he was a pastor here. I think he was a beloved pastor from 1925 to 1929, and I lost my place. I don't need it. And then he came back to interim in 1940 and again in 1947. So they kept calling him back. But during his main time as pastor, their Sunday school was overflowing. They had classes in each of these little cubbies, and down below, if you see the rods there were curtains, and they made classrooms, which is called the Akron model. They had classes down below in the basement. They had classes across in Central School, and they had classes on campus in Shepherd Hall. There were 400 Sunday school people. That doesn't mean kids. That means everybody. They'd mixed them up. They didn't do them by age. Well, they had a problem, so they needed more room, and that was only 18 years after they built the sanctuary. So MacLeod gets the credit for overseeing building Ed Hall, which means the whole thing, not just the room with the stage. So then they could accommodate all their Sunday school classes. The next is the Shepherd window. That is by Bernard Plockhurst in 1878, called The Good Shepherd. And it's just a popular image everywhere. You see it. I think I have it back on a mirror I got in Sunday school. But also, it appears in a lot of churches, borrowed by the Povey brothers and others. The Bible verse for this window is, I am a good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. That's from John 10:11. I think it helps to know the Bible verse. And the symbols in this, the finials and the crocets, the points and the crosses, make you, they're like Gothic buildings, and the symbol is you're looking heavenward. There's an Alpha and Omega in there, in the right order, and a crown above Jesus' head. The angels, their picture of the angels? Anyway, they're said to be a copy of the faces of the two Hannah daughters that donated this window in memorial of their parents, Joseph and Esther Bell Hannah, our founders. I don't know if that's true, but it's a story floating around. Next.
Didn't we saw the same angels in other churches?
Yeah, but when I looked, they were a little different, so it's probably not true. But what's the next slide? There are so many Jesus, the Good Shepherd. Lou, change it. There we go. There's some.
Did I get, okay,
Yeah, you can take a look at them. These are all in the book. They really deserve to be studied, and the places that they are. And is there another one? Yep, there's two. And then after I had most things together, I got a call from Gary, and he goes, "Do you have the Methodist Church in Twin Falls on your list?" No. and they have this window next. That's not next, is it?
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And in here, in what is that? The Congregational Church in Portland, they have an angel looking up at Jesus. And the next slide, really is Twin Falls. Look familiar? Someday I'll get to go see that too. Buddy, their minister, sent me that picture. Now we go to this window, which is sort of hidden. Oh no, I have to talk about the Hannahs, our founders. I'm going to say a little bit about them. 1852 was a pretty big year for Reverend Joseph Hannah. He graduated, he was ordained, he got married, and he left for the Oregon Territory. He put together a wagon train of Presbyterians, old school Presbyterians, and the whole idea was they were going to travel here to the Oregon Territory and set up a church. Esther Bell is his wife, and she wrote of that journey. You can read it in the Canvas Caravans, which is an abridged version that has errors. It says she was 18 when she got married. She was 28. And there is another journal of their travel across the country that was published in Presbyterians of the West that says that Joseph Hannah wrote it. Esther Bell, that's Esther Bell's full journal. It's in the library. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. I sat down and read it. I was going to peruse it, and I just sat there and read the whole thing at my desk. It was riveting. They ended up sort of by themselves. They all broke up, had disagreements, all that stuff that happens when you're crossing the country. So they came down with one tired mule and a few provisions to Oregon City. And they ended up here. He set up the church. He claimed land down south of town. The church had 4 members in the beginning. He was instrumental with others in town starting the first OSU, and then went back east to get funds for the Albany College, which became Lewis and Clark. He also pastored at different churches. In the beginning, he was a circuit rider or a itinerant preacher. And this is the quote that somebody said to memorialize him. He had a cheerful disposition. His heart was full of sunshine. That's what they said about him. His serious pictures don't look like it, so I like to think of it that way. He's survived by his 2 daughters, Hattie and Grace, who dedicated the windows. If you want to read more of his writings and his description of the valley after he got here, it's really his. It's really fascinating what the valley was like in 1853. That's in the library too. Okay, let's see, Esther Bell. Oh, the claim, okay. That, Mary Gallagher gave me this. So it's down south on Herbert Avenue. I think it's in the Herbert Farm and Natural area. Have to go check that out. It's near the Muddy River and Mary's River. But that's how we all started Now we move to the Ascension window. That's a 1520 painting from Raphael. One of the Cardinal Medici commissioned it, and the original hangs in the Vatican. And the verse is, well, he blessed them, he parted with them, and was carried up to heaven. Luke 24:51. The symbols are the cross and the lilies, the crown and the cross. And they symbolize the sovereignty of the Lord. And the lilies symbolize hope and rebirth. And the wheat and the sickle, I think, not clear, refers to the parable of the wheat field. You'll see the blue in these windows and the other windows, that bright blue at the top of the arch. That's Kokomo blue, and another mark of the Povey brothers. I like seeing Kokomo blue. And it has the dogwoods. And there aren't as many Ascension windows. We didn't encounter as many Ascension windows, but there's the window. Where's the other windows? They're coming. Next. There's some more. They're all kind of like different colors. Yeah. Okay. Now to who it's dedicated to. It was dedicated in 1935. It was installed in 1910. Okay, someone asked me, why was it installed later? It was not. It was installed it was dedicated to John Horner by his wife Isabel. John, I think, was a forceful character, maybe lovable too. But he was very outgoing. He graduated from Philomath College, started a religious literary paper in Philomath, the Philomath Crucible, if you're looking. He taught school because that wouldn't support him. He attended a seminar in Lafayette and met Reverend Bell, Martin's great-grandfather. Bell oversaw the building of this church. And they were friends ever after. John served in Roseburg. Somehow he was, I think through Reverend Bell, he was given a job at OSU, and he was there for 42 years. Started teaching English, introduced Oregon history, and then became head of the history department for 33 years. He also wrote a lot. There's articles in the GT he wrote. He liked prehistoric people. He was an ordained United Brethren minister. And they both were active members of our church. And he wrote, "My wife is far more devout as a church member than I, but I would rather miss my weekly bath than miss church attendance Sunday forenoon." Isabel was her own force. She was one of the movers and shakers in town. She was in the Tuesday reading club that did all kinds of things to add culture to this town. She was on the library board for 30 years, and she thought this church should be better lit. So she paid for some of these lights to be put around. I don't know which ones, but she paid for some electric lighting. And what is John Horner known most for? Where is it? Where's the clue? There it is. The Horner Museum. He thought OSU should have a museum of art and historical specimens. And so, yes, Bruce the Moose. I don't know if he collected Bruce the Moose. And our last window, I'm going over time, is the Gethsemane window. It is a copy of the 1890 painting by Johann Hendrik Hoffmann. And the original was bought by a collector who lived in San Francisco in 1906 during the earthquake. His house was destroyed in the earthquake, and that original painting was the only thing he took out of it. So it survived, and John D. Rockefeller later bought it, and he said no individual should own such a piece of art. And so he donated it to the Riverside Church in New York, where it hangs. The Bible verse is, and he withdrew from them and knelt down and prayed. That's from Luke 22:41. So the symbols are chalice with grapes, and you can guess it represents communion. And the anchor and the lily, a sign of hope and resurrection and eternal peace and Christ's victory over death. It also has the blues. Oh yes, you see the little squiggly things at the top of the middle window? One of our stained glass artists called those dog bones. Another Povey trait, I think. It has the jewels, it has the dogwood, the colors, the amber sort of opalescent glass and the greens. There are a lot of Povey windows. The coloring is, to me, very Povey. If you want to see the windows best, 2 o'clock in here. They glimmer and sparkle and shine. Originally, there was no education hall building there, so the light came in both sides, well, for 18 years. And then we have some other windows. Next. There's some other samples. This is so common in they're usually First Christian churches. They put them over the baptistry. Yeah, they do. So this window was dedicated in 1968 by Dr. Warrington's friends. He was an ordained minister also. First, he was a circuit rider around Pilot Rock, Oregon. He had a 40-mile route. He pastored in Freewater and Roseburg. He worked in World War I as a YMCA worker in France. He married Laura Letty, where's the baptismal? Her name's on it. It's dedicated to her. He served at OSU, first as secretary of the YMCA, and then he became head of the religious education department at OSU and U of O and the philosophy department. He taught some classes here. He was actually hired here as a counselor and student advisor. He had 2 children. So, what was remembered about him? He is best known for his mellow wisdom of his character. So, that's Dr. Warrington, and we have gone through all of our windows except all these in back. There's a whole bunch in back that let in light. None are picture windows. He's going to catch up. There's Laura Letty. There are other windows. We have 30 upstairs, 26 downstairs, 3 hidden in the family room, or the flower room. Right now we have 63 total, counting the big ones. Originally we had 65, but they took out 2 to add an education hall. We have 800 square feet of stained glass. We do not have a record of what we paid. The organ cost $4,000, but they didn't mention the windows. But in 1907, the Central Christian Church in Walla Walla, who has a larger set of windows than us, paid $1,300. They have a more stained glass square footage than us. And at the time, stained glass cost $1 to $3 a square foot to buy. When you bought your windows. The painted windows cost near $3. So here, maybe $800 to no more than $1,500 for all of these windows. To restore? No. One window, $25,000. Little more than the original. And then we're going to move on to restoration. If you haven't seen it when they took our windows out and put them back, that's what it looks like. They take these panels out. And I've known some people to freak out watching them take out the stained glass. They are very good. You can keep going through. We've done all 4. There they are, lowering it down. So I think someone said don't drop it, but keep going. And there they are, putting one back. Gary Swanson has 3 helpers. They're all firefighters. Gary Swanson was the fire marshal for the Gates Fire District for years. They all come help him free gratis. They're great people, all of them. So all 4 are done, and I give credit, Judy and I helped, but I give a major credit to Lynn Neville. She's a master at coming up with ideas for starting fundraisers and writing grants, and I think we just trailed along, right? I did. And the next one, there's Gary Swanson, our guy, who takes these windows apart. He totally takes them apart, puts in new lead, fixes up the wood, cleans them. When he cleaned them and brought them back, I felt like we had new windows. They were smudged really bad. The red stood out. I didn't even know they were red, I think. I thought it was brown. I mean, now they sparkle. So hats off to Gary. May get his house back together. Our stained glass, the 3 back windows were at a stained glass studio on his property 2 years ago. Was it 2? And then the San Am fire started. All those guys that were working on our windows went to work fighting fires. Gary said he fought fires for 3.5 days straight with hardly any sleep. And it was horrendous. But I was really concerned about him. I think our geometric windows could have been recreated. They did survive. The fire came within 1 foot of his shop. 1 foot. But his house burned. So he's rebuilding and making a better house. Luckily, he's an optimistic person because it was tough. And he's helping rebuild Gates. So that's for restoration. Now we're going to take a tour. You ready? Put your seatbelts on. We're going to take, unless you want to sit longer and have me talk, we're going to take a really quick tour of the windows that mostly Lou and I have seen. This is the Presbyterian Church, the first church that they did. This window's in back. They unfortunately built a balcony in front of it 2 years after it was installed because they needed more seating for a Presbyterian meeting. And those rocks are 3-dimensional. It's amazing. That window is amazing. It is so tall. You just want to stand there in awe. And somebody the other day told me that when you sit in the choir with the choir behind the organ, which is directly across, it's in the second story. You look at this window, and when the sun shines through, the very top is a clown face. I never thought of it like that. And now I can't get it out of my head. I might even argue that it might be a jack-o'-lantern, but it is a face. So now my perception of that window is totally different, but it's still magnificent. What's the next one? Another window from Presbyterian in Portland. The designs like these are in the early churches, but not in the later Povey art. Next. This is in Selwood. Charlie's walked by this. This church is a little wooden church that was floated down the river. It's now sort of an event venue. We got in because my niece got married in there. So we took pictures. And it only has really that one window. So a very small building. Next. This, I'm going to cry. David Slicker took this picture. It was originally the First Church of Evangelical Association, and then it was the North Baptist Church, and then the Table bought it, a church, and it was an old wooden building. It built in 1891. They wanted to do some remodeling, and it was in such deterioration, they ended up taking the building down and selling the building in pieces, and they took the windows out. And next, this is how we encountered them. What's next, Luke? Like that, in a warehouse for sale in pieces. All wrong. I wanted to buy all the pieces of that window you just saw and put it in this church somewhere. Of course, I couldn't do that. But that to me had a sad ending. They're not all sad. There are church stories in the book, which to me are fascinating. They take such unexpected turns sometimes, and sometimes they stay as a church as we started. So, what's next? This is in Boise. It is a Jewish congregation. We got in there by the skin of our teeth. They were teaching Hebrew to students, and they kind of grimaced but let us in after we rang the doorbell numerous times. And they just let us in their, I don't know what they call it, they don't call it sanctuary, and just let us alone and let us take pictures. David Slicker restored these windows too. Next. In the Dalles, this church has turned into a museum event. They built a new church right beside it, but they care for it very much. They still own it. Next. This is in Dayton. We happen to be coming from Montana, and I realized, there's two churches in Dayton and Walla Walla, and Lou went, Dayton, Washington. And we got in the first one. A caretaker was entering and said, okay, and gave us a very nice tour. I think we have a couple of these. What's next, Lou? Here's another one. And do we have another one? We do not. And we were in Astoria, and they have an old wooden yellow building, and it was open, and we said, hello, hello, and nobody was there. And we walked through the building, found the sanctuary, hello, hello, nobody was there. So we took these pictures, which happened to be, Lou liked this church the best. And there's two. There's actually three, but I have 2 slides. And we left the brochure which I take with me, and a note. And the pastor called us later, and we went back and had the best old talk. But they're caring for their windows in their building really well. Next, the Congregational Church. I've got in there by the skin of our teeth, too. It will teach me to make appointments someday. Somebody trusted us who was leaving and let us in their building, which is a maze. The minister, I guess, heard we were in there and came and found us. And but there's 3 sets of these windows with a balcony in front that break it up. But yeah, there's another slide. These are such color-intensive windows. This is one of my favorite churches. It's just awesome. And they're all in the back and the sides. I like that our windows can be seen from the pews. But this set of windows is just amazing. What's next? Yeah, there's another one. And let's go on. This is, it was the Central Christian Church in Walla Walla for years and years. And when we were driving around with the trailer, I was looking for the Central Christian Church, and we kept passing a building, and I go, but that looks like it. But now it's the Covenant Presbyterian Church. The Christian Church had just given their building to the Covenant Presbyterian group because, well, they dwindled. So now I think it's still Covenant Presbyterian, and they rent out another space to the Crazy Love Church. So these windows are, the greens in them are something else. And they have a knight. Every once in a while you end up seeing a knight in a stained glass window, which just seems kind of strange to me. Do we have another one, Lou? Yes, there's the opposing one. They're just gorgeous. They're huge. They cast light in the whole building. They let a lot of light in. And the purples and the greens are something else. What's next? Okay, St. James, that's downtown Portland. They have some other than Povey windows, and there's 2 Poveys. They're way up high. And you notice something different about this window? It's Jesus and the children, I think. He has gray hair. The only one that has gray hair, or blonde. I think it's gray, actually. I think it's gray. Okay, next. Oh, another church in Dayton. This is the one, nobody was there also. We wandered around, said hello to nobody, took our pictures. And I think there's another one. The whole ceiling, it was a wooden building, the whole ceiling was taken out, and they had a false ceiling that was taken out, things were drooping, water damage obviously, and the steeple went, they've since fixed it. And a window like this that's in Dayton, there's a description in the newspaper of the Corvallis Methodist Church of a window like this, which is dedicated to a pioneer. And it said, and I think it got moved to this church over here. I've yet to find it, but I will. Okay, next. Another Dayton window in the same church. We never found anybody in that church. We just left. This is the Joseph Church. We were going by there. We were camping up there, and we were just in Joseph, and we go by, and we go, wait, that's Povey. And I mean, after a while, you think you can identify them, but I've been fooled. So no one was there, but we went back, and the minister happened to be going in there. And yes, it's Povey, and Gary Swanson, our restoration artist, had redone these. The minister happened to be the mother of the people that bought our old house here. Things are strange. Okay, next. This is Lebanon. It was first a Methodist Episcopal, and when the Methodists and the Episcopal, they joined North and South, so they abandoned a lot of buildings way back. So now it's Valley Life. It was an evangelical church when we found it. One day when we went by, they were setting up for a wedding, and they let us in, flew with his camera, and we got some pictures. There's some more. That one's way in back, up in a balcony. Next. And that one's on the side, and oh man, does the sun glow through this one. It's just alive. Next. This is in the back of their sanctuary. It is a very large window, probably 2 stories tall. This is one that you just stand in awe of. And they have some little ones around the sides. Normal, like, but this one is just something else. You should go see it. Okay, next. In the same kind of area, Tacoma. This church was open. They were running Vacation Bible School in their little brick building in their sanctuary. It was alive. It was cool. They were singing. The teachers were jumping around. And we went and took pictures of their windows. And Bellingham, this is the second church we saw in Bellingham. I didn't know about this one, but we went to a Presbyterian church on the same block, and they said, oh, you should go down to the Methodists. They're Povey too. Okay. There was 3 panels like this, and then the chancel. They're very dark, so that the whole sanctuary was dark, but the colors are so intense and beautiful. It just takes you. So when I was doing my research at the very end, I looked them up, and they just sold their building. So the builder said that they would keep the church and the windows intact, and I don't know how they're going to use them. But this set of windows got to stay in that building. Anyway, next, Albany Presbyterian also has Povey windows. There's the angel at the tomb, and then there's Nicodemus, the rich man talking to Jesus. And then all around, their church is the same builder, except they have this bulb that's in the back, and for extra seating. They have a catalog of Bible story painted windows all around their church, which are not pictured here. They're in a poster in the library if you want to see it. And then this is where we went to Bellingham first. They have knights on the side of Jesus. This is dedicated to the founder and the minister who had the misfortune of being, on 1910, riding a train over the Cascade Summit when there was a heavy snow and an avalanche. So he got a window named after him. It was a disaster, actually. Next, of the Walla Walla window, that is probably 3 stories tall. Photoshop just conveniently took out the balcony that obliterated half the top and bottom of the window, because it's more impressive whole. And they have 2 of those. Again, lots of Bible stories. Next. And Bend. This is, I think, of the 1920s style, where the image is smaller, and then they have a lot of white rectangular panels there. Yeah, they did that more in the 1920s. Next, except in a Catholic church, they just have really complicated, colorful windows. There are many more in this church. One is the Ascension of Mary, but that's a cathedral, not just a church. And they let us wander around in there too by ourselves. Next, the Methodist Church, which you can just go see down the street. They have 2 walls of windows. There's another one. And then they had one in the front in their chancel. They had a fire in 1977. They saved all the ones on the side. The one in the chancel was too toasted. So they took all the pieces down there and they made the rosette window that's up there now. Okay, next. We didn't go here till after the book was printed. We went here. We were there on the 4th of July, and a lady custodian had the urge to go to work on the 4th of July so she wouldn't be behind in her work all week. So we lucked out again. And this window is in the back. All the rest of theirs are clear. This also has a huge, deep balcony with these walls that come out. You can't see the window, so Photoshop again to bring out the window. It's a pretty nice window when you can see it. They didn't even know their windows were Povey. Some don't. Okay, next. Oh yes, Charlie can tell me about this. He's a John McLaughlin expert. He was also, what was it? St. Gregory, I gotta look. I didn't write it down. I did. By the Pope, he was designated Knights of St. Gregory, I think, in 1846. And for his work in spreading the Catholic faith in the Oregon Territory. So for his memorial window, he gets dressed up as a knight with a spear and his shield, and he's standing on a dragon with a crown, I think. That window, that was a very old church, and they've torn it down at 1891, I think. Wood doesn't last so long. But this window and a window of Bishop Blanchett are in the Oregon Territorial Museum in Oregon City. It's really a sweet little museum. So that's in the entrance. So there he is, one of the most different windows you will see. I think we're at the end. Did I put in any more? Oh yeah, I snuck in the Tophanish window. Tophanish is on the Yakima Reservation. This is a Methodist church. I don't think they're using it so much. This is a borrowed photo. We did not get in. I don't even know if they're having church there anymore. But as we were walking around the building, we heard a lot of Spanish on the Yakima Reservation. A lot of Mexicans live in Tophanish. I think the farms have a lot to do with that. But this is a World War I soldier, and I can't figure out who the lady is. The Liberty, maybe, Lady Liberty. But it's a different window and it's fun. All right, is that it? Okay. This window is in Gary's shop and survived the Santa Ana fire. It belongs to the porterhouse. And it was it was the upper panel of the window as the stairs come down, not by the door. And we rented it out to the Mental Health Alliance at one time. And there were 3 people in the house, the psychiatrist and 2 patients. One of those patients went totally berserk with a broom handle at that window. And he did this damage till he was restrained. The other person there told me this story years later. She's my friend. I didn't know she was there. But Gary is repairing this for us for no cost. So I can't wait till it comes back. But it won't be real fast. But maybe we can hang it in the office, huh? Where it's nice and safe. I think it's a Povey window, but we don't know. Says Povey, doesn't it, Judy? All right, the last slide. These are the signatures that some churches have. The Methodists are signed. The Christian church over there is not, though they appear in the Povey probate records. So there's their proof, but that's kind of fun. So I'm going to give credits to a few people, like the techie wizard up there, and Cooper, who rescues the techie wizard, who is one of his own, and Avonlea for converting the slides to the Mac software so we could see them, and to my amazing editors and proofers, Judy Miller and Patricia. It's really tough to turn your work over to somebody, but it really gets better when you do. And to Lynn Neville. I hope you are watching, because we are indebted to you. And so in case she is, there is likelihood she is. Can we all clap for her? You can yell thank you, whatever. Thank you, Lynn. And we had a really good visit with Lynn and Steve this summer when I presented the book to her. It was very special. But I hope you're watching.
Where do they live now?
Seattle.
Where? Seattle?
Seattle, yeah. 15 minutes from Luke's sister. But we had fun visiting and giving her the book. Because this is partly her idea, even though I got the job. Thanks, Lynn. It needed to be done. And the length it took to do the book added to what was in it, because all of these churches with Povey windows, there's not a list. There's about 20 in a Wikipedia article, but the proofs are in archives, they're in old newspapers. Someone told me about the David Povey probate records, which tells about a year of them. Some churches say that their windows are Povey. I mean, these are hidden things. So in the book, which is only supposed to be about our windows, is a list of 157 other, or churches, ours included, of churches with Povey windows. And I think it is the longest reconstructed Povey church list published. So, and they all have little stories. If you remained the same church at the same address, you just get the name and address. But some of these churches have really interesting, quirky stories. You've sat a long time, but I want to tell you in all this that of the 157, 97 have attained their original identity. And you can read the whole summary because you've sat there a long time. But 136 of the 157 sets of stained glass windows as of April of 2022 are still surviving. It's only 20 lost in 100 plus years. Not bad. So, are there any questions? Yes, Karen.
Jan, how did you, I guess, find all of these churches? Just by driving by and seeing the windows and saying, that's a Povey, or did you, how did you kind of get started?
That's one method. No, we have not been to 157 churches. 76 of the churches that I found were last summer when I thought, 5 days after I thought I finished the book. So I had to go back and do a lot of work. You have to dig, and my digging happened over time, except last winter it was very intense. But the web helps sometimes, and to trace the stories, you've got to really be a detective to trace what became what. And sometimes it's just not there. But let's see, we were in a church in Portland, the Taft Church, it's called because President Howard Taft dedicated it. It was the Unitarian Church. It went through 4 or so denominations. Finally, 3 years ago, someone bought it and worked on it for 2 years. They kept the integrity of the building, and the windows are still there. And we had lunch at the Steeplejack Brewery. And so 2 are museums, 5 are community and concert venues, 5 are restaurants and breweries, 1's an assisted living center, 1's a memory care facility, 1's divided up into apartments, that's in Pullman, 1's a rock climbing gym. That's in the Dalles. I have yet to see that. I really want to see that. 2 are wedding chapels, and 1 is to be determined. That's the one in Bellingham. Some have burned, some have, not made it through earthquakes. But a lot of them are intact or the windows were transferred. So it took a lot of digging, a lot of sources, old newspapers. I got a subscription to newspapers.com last winter. I got a copy of the David Povey probate records from 1924. There's a few articles that have little short lists all over. It's just across the board. There's no constructed list. So I did it because I'm curious. And we got to visit some of them. It's been fun. Met good people too, really fun people. Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to thank you for your passion, and for your time, and for your labor of love. What a gift. I just thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, the windows inspire it, really. What a beautiful subject to study. It's just, most of the time it's a pleasure. Learning how to put things in books,
It's kind of funny, we could be traveling through a channel saying, oh, there's a church here with Povey windows.
It's true.
And of course, we gotta go find it and stop.
Most of the time.
It is amazing how many times, we've come by and thought that a church would be closed. This summer, we were coming down the coast. We were up north of Tillamook, and we were coming down the coast, and we came through Cloverdale. And Jan had found that there is a Catholic church in Cloverdale that was built in 1921, I think.
Yeah, St. Joseph's.
That had Povey windows. And we came through there and, let's go find it. This beautiful old church up on the hill.
The little wooden church.
Yeah, and here was a guy that was taking care of the grounds and all, and he had the keys, and he said, sure, come on in. He told us all about it,
It was a small church. I think they had about 4 little windows on the sides and 2 arches in the front. One was I think it was Good Shepherd, and one was Mary. But the rest were pretty geometric with little picture medallions of Bible stories in them. But I don't know, going in that building affected me. It was very reverent effect. There was nobody leading service, but I felt like I was going to church. It was very special. One of those thin places, I guess. Not all churches affect me like that, but that day it affected me.
It was on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, Sunday afternoon on a holiday
Staff would
weekend.
have a person there working in the yard,
Hmm.
let us in.
Let us in, went back to spreading bark dust. Yeah, that's not in the book either. And I'm not going to try to visit every church. 157 is mighty impossible. So, and they sort of repeat. But I do have a list, like in the book, but rearranged by city and state. Take it traveling just to get Lou in trouble with his camera. And he's really good at it. So, any other questions? Yeah.
What came first? Like when this church was built, were those windows shaped like that, and then Povey came in and did the windows for that shape?
David Povey worked with the architect when they were designing the building, I think. He did with other churches, so I assume here. And I think the architect and they worked together to create it. And then in one church in Eugene, there was a lot of newspaper articles about it. And it was a pretty quick build, and they had updates every week about the building. So it was really good. Not normal, but they said that they built the outer casings, and then they took them out, and they shipped them by train up to Portland to the Povey Brothers studio, and then they came back, and then I don't know, the Povey Brothers used those frames and they came back. Must have been the inner casings. And that's the only time I've heard that the casings went up empty to the Povey Brothers and came back with a window. But I assume that happened more than once. And they shipped them by train, and then a group from Povey Brothers would come help install them. So I assume.
All those churches worked with the architect to,
Yeah, in Pullman at a Presbyterian church, very large. This is now college apartments. But David Povey actually came up and talked with them on Sunday and sort of told them his plans. And he spoke to a Sunday school class, also in the newspaper. Newspapers reported everything back then.
But it's interesting because these three are similar and that one is so different.
I'm guessing that the daughters of Hannah, Hattie and Grace, had a lot to do with the choosing of this window, because it is different. And they dedicated it and gave the money when they were being planned. The others were dedicated later. They were all put in at the same time. Please don't ask me that. Someone asked me that. But two were dedicated in 1968. One was dedicated in 1935. So they didn't have dedications on in 1910, but the Hannah sisters did. So I expect they had their say in this window. What do you think, Judy? You think that's the reason? Because it's different. It is different.
Over the course of your 10 years of working as hard as you have to get all this together, what do you know about the current availability of product for people who are doing restoration? And is there a pretty good network of availability of historical glass and colors and
Is a dwindling amount of stained glass artists. They're aging, like some of us, and hopefully they're teaching younger people. But it is a dwindling craft. You cannot get older stained glass, but the source for that is when they dismantle buildings. The stained glass artists go and collect it that way. David Slicker had one grand collection of old stained glass, and these folks know of each other. If you mention their names, they know of each other, and they're not shy. They could contact them. Do you have this color? Or sometimes they can't get it. There's some bad colored pieces back there where something happened to the window, which Gary will fix when he gets to it, because he got lots of that color that was his place. There's a brown section up there that's totally wrong, but something happened. Somebody fixed it once, but that's how it's done. I was gonna
Started like a bunch of quilters.
Yeah, exactly like they're a bunch of quilters that stash things. Yeah, I have that, yeah. Well, maybe someone else has that. But you need it, because the glass is tinted differently.
You commented on the intense blue over here.
Yeah, the Kokomo blue.
That's hard to come by, is it?
I don't know if you can get that anymore. The Kokomo company is still in business in Indiana, but I don't know if they sell that blue. Anybody else? All right, there's more in the book. You can buy it or not. It's totally your choice. But it is full of information I cannot impart it all in this amount of time. It's been fun. I worked at it hit and miss over time and learned how to lay out something for a book in the meantime.
I hope you're sharing this with some of the other churches around that you've visited that you have, like the Methodists and other places that you have this information available, because I think it's invaluable. So I hope that there's a network of.
So far, no, but we're just introducing it today. It's been at my house printed all summer, but we thought we'd wait till fall and to get Scott kind of settled.
I'm just thinking that, like the Presbyterian Church in Albany and other places.
Right.
Would might be very interested in.
They might.
The history of.
They should be.
Luther's and
They
other
should be.
things. So, just
and-
putting that out there.
It might get there. You guys come first. I did take it to the Library Association's meeting up in Federal Way, where there's the three states that Povey covered, really.
Well, that's good.
And I took the book up there, and I showed it especially to the First Christian Church in Portland, because I have their book. And I've met the person who wrote it, and they did buy a copy for themselves. So maybe we'll get it out there. First, we'll deal with you guys, because it was written for you.
Well, I can see you being the head of a bunch of bus tours, starting here in town.
Oh, no. This,
Let's see, a bus tour with lunch,
this,
depending on what time the sun is shining.
this new career with this unexpected helping with the window project seems to be endless. Okay, well, a tour will be fun. All right, thank you guys. You're a wonderful audience. All right, Judy, do you have more?
I don't, but thank you for coming and being a real audience for Jan. And
You have kicked off a new book, I guess. Yeah. Am I still on, Lou? Ah, disconnect me, please.
All right.
Thank you, Lou. And the sanctuary was built in what year?
1910. Karen, it's really nice to see you. I've been thinking about you. I'll disconnect this and say hello. I'm stuck in a microphone.
Hey, Jan.